Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly clergy meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kanetta Baptiste, the Vice President of Small Business Solutions at the New American Chamber of Commerce. And today, I'm gonna inform you a little about getting grants for your nonprofit organization. Okay, now we all know. Okay. We all know in order to get funding for our organizations, we need to have a proper grant application. We need to know how to fill that application in order to get that grant. And sometimes we have the good ideas, we have all the bright ideas for our organization, what our goals are, what we want to achieve, the contracts we want to get into, how much money we plan to spend. We have those good ideas, but if it's not done properly, your grantor is not going to look at your application. And the truth about writing grants, you need to develop a successful grant writing system. And the funders, they don't really look at what you need, but they look at your grant proposal. Because there is some of them, especially in the private sector, there is a scale where they look at the history of grant applicants to see if it's anything similar to what they've seen before, and this is where they make a decision. That's for the private sector. It's a little different in the public sector, and it's always good to have a grant than not have one at all. You may have, like I said, the good ideas, but if you don't put it in writing properly, you're not going to get a grant. You're not going to get funding. You're just going to be swimming in very deep waters. And you will have, yes, while your organization may have a very clear goal, you may have a good idea how you want to serve the community, how you want to serve other members, but if you don't have that thing down pat, you're not going to get any funding for your organization. And you also need to ask for the specific amount of money you need. Do not, like we say, beat around the bush and say you think you're going to need $10,000 when you know that the contract is going to be at least $20,000. You know, don't try to underestimate the contract value or the grant value when you know you're going to need more money. Do not be afraid. If you need $1 million, ask for $1 million. You will get $1 million as long as your grant is profound, as long as you've been very honest and you know your contracts are legitimate. Now, the truth about writing grants, the best way to never get a grant is not write one, and the best way to get a grant is follow instructions. Then you need to follow a successful grantmanship. You need to know who you are and what you want to accomplish, and also you need to know what needs to be done and what you need to do to achieve that. Then you need to build a relationship with the funding source. You need to get to know the company or the organization that's going to give you that grant. Get to know them personally. Get to know the chief in there, the manager. You know, you have to keep in contact with them. Don't just, you apply for a grant and you go in and here, this is my proposal and I want. No, get to know them. Get to know how they think. Get to know what they're looking for. If you could twiddle your way through their system, then you will know exactly what they're looking for. If changes needs to be done, you could say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to yourself and you're going to go home and you're going to do this thing all over. So you have to build a relationship with them where you will know exactly what they're looking for in order to give you that grant. And you must write a winning proposal and then you follow through. Now start with a good idea. Poor ideas will not be successful regardless of how well they are packaged, like I said earlier, and good ideas are often not funded because they are not packaged well. For every good idea that's funded, there are others that aren't, not packaged well. Then what you need to do is improve your packaging. And I know there are many experts out there, especially in all the other chambers of commerce, and we also have some experts at our Chamber of Commerce too that will help you put that grant application together. A lot of persons have come in with ideas. They really want to get this grant thing going on. They have this bright idea. They want to do some charity. They want to get some contracts, but they need to get the money to get off the ground. They have the ideas, but when it comes to putting it in perspective, what should come first, what should come next, some people are totally oblivious. So you need to speak to professionals, work with professionals, so you could improve your packaging. Now, when it comes to funding, there are different types of funding. You have private source funding, which is foundations, where you get general support, endowments, project grants, challenge matching grants. And challenge matching grants, that's those companies, they look at grants that they've issued in the past and they match it against yours to see how did the previous person or the previous organization present their package compared to how you're presenting your package. They could probably take your package as an example and say, here is something that we could, you know, keep as an example, because this is something new, or this is something that we could look at when we reviewing grant proposals. So, and then you have fellowship and capital grants. Then you have corporations, that's direct cash. Then you have donations, be it equipment, furniture, non-cash items. You have marketing and promotion products as well. And these all fall under private source fundings. Then you have professional and trade associations, which includes groups such as fraternities, sororities, the labor unions, and they are generally smaller grantors. They don't give you that huge amount of capital if you're going into some huge contracts, especially if you plan to operate on an international basis. Then you have fundraising activities, which are activities and organization sponsors to fund specific projects. Sometimes you will not get all the funding that you request when you request them from private fund grantors. You're just going to get probably startup cost, or you will just get just for one contract, or maybe they say they'll cover your compensation to your employees, and you have to find some other form to get more money through other or bigger companies, public companies. Now, there are advantages of the funding sources. Where the public sources is concerned, there's a purpose set by legislation. So they go according to the legislation. And most likely, they award large contracts. So if you're a small company, you may want to choose to go through private funding. They most likely pay all project costs. They use prescribed formats for proposal, and that's prescribed by the federal government. They also most likely offer technical assistance, and their funds are available to a wider array of organizations as opposed to the private funding sources. Now, the advantages of the private funding sources, they focus on emerging issues. There's a wide range in size of available grants. They're willing to support startup funds. Complex proposals are not always required, and they may provide alternative forms of assistance, often fewer applications because of the specificities. So the private companies, they're not as, I should say, broad as the public companies. So some of them may only be able to fund, or some of them are probably, how should I say that? There are some private companies that they are subcontracted by the federal government, and they are only allowed to fund certain types of projects or smaller projects. So therefore, they could be scrutinized properly under the federal government. So the federal government could actually have a hands on tracking the number of contracts that they give out, and the smaller the contract, the easier it makes the federal government's job. Then you have the disadvantages of public and private funding sources. The public, they're more bureaucratic. There are complex proposal requirements and compliance procedures, which requires more work for you as the applicant. Sometimes difficult to sell new ideas because of high-risk approaches, and they challenge political trends. For the private funding sources, the grants are usually smaller. Information on policy and procedures must be researched. Limited staff, less opportunity for personal contact, and less likely to cover all the project costs, like I mentioned earlier. Now, decision points for government grants. There are questions to ask when applying for government grants. Who is eligible? What are the deadlines? What is the CFDA number? And that you could get through federal government sources. There are certain organizations that the federal government appoints to handle this, where you get the CDFA number, also where you get the DUNS number, which I mentioned at a prior meeting. What is the award amount per grant? How many projects will be funded? Is there a match requirement? Where do I get the full application? What are the format requirements? Research foundations. There's a select 5 to 10 related to project need. Check annual reports. Look for match. Develop a draft proposal. Make contracts and ask questions. Revise the proposal and also meet the deadlines. You have to meet your proposal deadline. That is one of the ways they're going to see you mean business. Do not ask for an extension. If you're planning to apply for a grant and you know you're going to need it 6 months down the line, start working on it now and try to meet the deadline. Try to get all the information, review it, go over it again, make sure that everything is in that package, because the longer you take, they're going to send it back to you, tell you this is missing. It's going to take another how many months to review, because you don't know how many proposals they have at the desk to review. So if you get everything together, it's an easier chance that your application, when they see you have everything, will be reviewed before many others. So make sure that you have all the documents in there, because if they send it back, that process is going to take much longer than when it originally went in. What forms are required and whose signatures are needed? And all these questions can be answered by your professional grant writer if you cannot do it on your own. Who is the program contact? Where do I submit the application and in what form? Be it electronically or whether you have to personally bring it in to get a stamped receipt. The decision points for corporate grants. Develop prospects through research. Find and use a champion. Determine match, prepare proposal. Make contact. Follow proposal requirements, that's the application and also the presentation of the application and the order in which you go about packaging that grant proposal. So that's just some pointers in applying for grants and what you need to know in order to get your grants. I know there are a lot of organizations that have applied for grants, both private and public, and they did not get the grant just because the applications failed. And as of now, the government is, they tighten up on everything, not just non-profit organizations. They tighten up in every sector, whether applying for a grant or loan or whatever it is. So, and they're scrutinizing every organization, especially 501c3 organizations now. They're scrutinizing them heavily to make sure that when they apply for grants or when they're applying for grants, that there is no illegal activity that will be taking place, no fraudulent. Don't apply and say you need $15,000 for a project that's only $5,000, because they want to know where the rest of the money. And in the long run, it could be 5-10 years and they come to audit you. It's going to be a crash, and we don't want to get ourselves in that predicament with the federal government. So any questions, feel free to see me at the end of the meeting, schedule an appointment, or if you have your grant writers, that's information you want to bear in mind. So when you speak with them, you have an idea, you know what questions to ask them to make sure that you're on the right track. Thank you.